Hi, it's Mark Graban. Welcome to Lean Blog Audio. Today, I am reading a blog post about something I did 1 year ago today as I'm recording this. It's a blog post that was published in January 2025. It's titled, I'm Still Dreaming About My Meal at Sukiyabashi Jiro's Sushi in Tokyo. Easier to eat and enjoy than it is to say that. If you want to read the blog post, there's a link in the show notes, or you can go to leanblog.org/audio 446. So here's the post. Well, before Katie Anderson's Japan study trip in November, I was able to spend 6 days in Kyoto and Tokyo with two friends, one of whom is cropped out of the photo that you see in the blog post for privacy, and the other has an emoji that approximates his general expression. So that's why that's overlaid over his face. But through our hotel concierge, we were able to snag lunchtime seats at the famed Sukiyabashi Jiro restaurant. See, it's easier when I should have practiced more before recording. But anyway, Sushi Jiro was made famous by the film Jiro Dreams of Sushi, something I blogged about years ago, and that's linked in the blog post. You're not allowed to take photos in the restaurant. They will take a photo of you or your group afterwards outside the restaurant. So I'm in the photo. To the far left is Yoshikazu Ono, the son of the main subject of the film and the founder of the restaurant, Jiro Ono. Now, Jiro was at one point, a three-star Michelin restaurant selection, the first ever sushi restaurant to receive that honor. President Obama and other famous people have enjoyed eating there. They lost the stars, really kind of a technicality, in 2019 because they're technically no longer open to the public. That's a requirement to be a Michelin star restaurant. You can only book through hotel concierges and maybe if you have insider connections. Well, Jiro Ono of Jiro Dreams of Sushi fame is now 99 years old, and it said that you can't be guaranteed to see him working there, but he still does make appearances at the restaurant. But his son, Yoshikazu, carries on with the traditions and I would say excellence. Ono's other son, Takashi, started his own restaurant in Tokyo. So I wrote this blog post not to brag about this, but to share some observable details about their operations. Now, the price of the meal was actually on par with a high-end omakase sushi meal in Dallas or other major cities. Overall price is a bit lower because they don't serve any alcohol. Jiro believes green tea is what complements the sushi best. So I'm not saying it was affordable, but it wasn't the most expensive meal I've ever had. So let's talk about the cycle time for the meal. We arrived early, can't be late in Japan, or you shouldn't be late, just out of respect. We were greeted promptly when the restaurant opened, right on time. There were 10 seats. I was surprised that five were empty for the lunch serving. There were the three of us, me and my two friends, and there were two other diners in there together. The one thing that surprised me, and I mean, I had known about this from reading about the restaurant and watching videos beyond the documentary, but the pacing of the meal surprised me. The menu, as you can see in the blog post, is omakase. That's a Japanese word that means chef's choice. And they offer 20 pieces of nigiri sushi, which is fish on sushi rice. There's some other flavors added to the rice, vinegar, and I forget exactly what's in there, yuzu citrus, other things on top of the fish. So the day's menu is based on what's fresh and what's good at the market that morning. It was tuna, flatfish, squid. I think it's pronounced abalone, or abalone. Uh, got that mixed up. Sorry. Striped jack, fatty tuna, gizzard shad, bonito, mantis shrimp, jack mackerel, boiled prawn, needlefish, clamshell, vinegared jack mackerel, sea urchin, baby scallops, salmon roe, sea eel, and egg. Rice is prepared in advance. It's probably prepared that morning. You know, it's cooked in a batch and it's stored in a round bamboo container to the chef's left. And there's a diagram that I've drawn in the blog post. There were two, sometimes three assistant prep chefs working around him. One was generally slicing fish and seafood in that really precise sushi manner. They were cutting a batch of 5 pieces for the 5 customers. The slices were put on a tray that was then generally moved to the chef's right, and a course or two was generally queued up for him to do the assembly work. And again, you can see that here in the diagram of where we're seated across the counter and the work and the locations of the team behind the counter. I'm not here to critique the layout or their flow. I mean, it seems to work for them. It seems like a fine tuned sushi making machine. And I guess, it's my only criticism is that the pacing of the courses was fast. I wasn't using my phone as a stopwatch, but it took about 20 minutes to serve the 20 courses. And it was definitely, as we'd say in the lean methodology, a push system where the chef was handing the next piece to you when he was pushing it. So you better be ready to grab it and eat. You got to keep up. You want to eat the sushi right after it's been prepared. Normally, even if the pace isn't so fast, I wouldn't say I felt rushed, but it was still a little quicker than I would have preferred. Everything seemed driven by the chef and the team's cycle time, how long it took to produce pieces, rather than the customer's, we might say, takt time, the rate at which we wanted sushi. We weren't pulling, we weren't raising our hand to say, "Okay, I'm ready for another piece now." It might have taken a chef maybe 12 seconds to assemble each piece as he handed them the customers one at a time. There's no batching of what was served as it was ready to eat. It was, make, serve, rotating around the 5 of it. It's almost like he was dealing blackjack cards around a table at a casino. Now, the meal probably, looking at that timing, it might have been a slightly slower pace had all 10 seats been filled because it would just take longer to do the work of 10 pieces and getting around in that cycle. The flow of components going to Yoshikazu ensured that he didn't have any waste of waiting. It seemed optimized around the chef's efficiency, not so much the customer's needs. Don't get me wrong, everything was delicious. It was amazing. The menu had some of my favorite foods like uni, and some of the fish or seafood was new to me, but it was quick. President Obama dined there in 2014. He was actually, of course, president at the time. He was served by Jiro, and it was said to be that 20-minute sushi meal. Now, when the nigiri omakase is over, things do get a little bit more leisurely. My friends and I they moved us, or they said, okay, follow us, come over here to a booth style table where we were served the most amazing piece of cantaloupe style melon that I've ever had. It was so fresh. It was so naturally sweet. And I don't normally like cantaloupe, but we were allowed to linger over that and eat at our pace. So the whole experience, the whole process makes me think about the dimensions of quality. There are multiple dimensions of quality in a hospital. Think about the quality of care and the quality of the experience and yeah, it's just the food and how you're being treated, for example. When I worked for Dell Computer this is over 25 years ago, the quality of the computer products mattered, but Dell was also selling the quality of the corporate buying and delivery process. Not just avoiding being late, but also trying not to arrive a day when a company loading dock and IT team might not be there ready to receive the order of computers. Now, the restaurant lived up to the food quality component by far, but service quality is very subjective. Was the meal too fast? Would it have been better if the chef had interacted with us? Then again, we were foreigners in a foreign land. I don't know how good his English is, but he didn't interact with the two Japanese customers to our left either. Should the chef be on a bit of a customer pull system where he adjusts his pacing to the diner's pace, slowing down as necessary? How much do you customize that experience? Now, it was 2018 or 2019 on a previous trip. I took a sushi making class. You can see photos in the blog post with the chef in Japan. And he told us that each piece of nigiri sushi should be bite-sized, and that meant customizing, where customers with smaller mouths, he said women, um, maybe that's generally true, um, would get smaller pieces than those with bigger mouths. Now, in the US, I don't know, you might get sued for not giving the same amount of sushi to each customer who's paying the same price. But my visit to Sukiyabashi Jiro was a fascinating experience, not just for the exceptional sushi, but also for the insights into craftsmanship, efficiency, and customer experience. The precision and the speed of service were remarkable, though it raised questions about the balance between efficiency and hospitality. It reminded me that quality isn't just about the end product, it's also about the experience of receiving it. So here's some questions. We can talk about it in the blog post or if you're watching on YouTube, in the comments there. Would you prefer a sushi experience that is hyper efficient or one that allows a little more time for conversation and savoring each piece? How do you define great service? By the speed and precision of delivery or by the level of engagement with the chef and the team? Have you ever had an experience, maybe in any business, where efficiency came at the cost of comfort or enjoyment? How did that impact your perception of quality? If Jiro's sushi making process was a lean system, would you see the speed as waste reduction or as an area for customer driven improvement? And finally, what lessons from this experience could be applied in other industries like healthcare, manufacturing, or hospitality? So in the blog post, there are links to a couple other posts I've written. One was going back to when I first watched the film Jiro Dreams of Sushi, and I wrote about that, a blog post titled Jiro Dreams of Sushi and the Kaizen Mindset. And then there's also a blog post titled What Japan Taught Me About Lean, Standardized Work, and Following the Rules. That was kind of looking back at the sushi making class. And there's a photo that's, of course, not real sushi. That is Play Doh type clay that we had to use in the sushi making class before we were allowed to touch any real food. So, again, that's the blog post. You can check it out if you want to comment there, if you want to share it with anybody at leanblog.org/audio 446. Leanblog.org/audio 446. Thanks.